Hello everyone. Today as a group we are going to be talking about planning fallacy and its effect on our lives. So how many times have you made plans to complete tutorial sheets until a set date and found yourself behind on schedule when that day came? This is the main effect of planning fallacy. So the planning fallacy is a phenomenon in which predictions about how much time will be needed to complete a future task display an optimistic bias and cause the underestimation for the time needed. This usually occurs regardless of the individual's knowledge that past tasks of a similar nature have taken longer to complete than generally planned. Now we're going to give an example for planning fallacy that took place in the business world.
Thanks, Dork. So I'm going to give a business example of planning fallacy. And actually, one of the reasons we chose this topic was because we felt it was of particular relevance to us. And a lot of these examples are, in fact, engineering products. And perhaps the most famous example is the Sydney Opera House. Um, it was intended to be completed in 1963 for a cost of $7 million. It was, in fact, completed a decade later for a cost of over $100 million. And actually, this is mainly due to rushed planning, and there were two major problems to contend with. The first was an inaccurate analysis of the geology of which the opera house was built. The soil couldn't bear the weight of the structure. They assumed the soil was sandstone, but it was in fact loose alluvial deposits. And the second factor is that they started building the structure before knowing the weight of the roof, because the architect hadn't yet finalized the design, which means they had to rebuild the anchoring points for the roof. So, in summary, it really was bad planning from the start, and it was mainly rushed in this particular instance because of political motivations. The project was being backed by a recently elected government, while the popular opinion was still favorable. So now I'm going to move on to Bassam, who's going to talk to us about some daily examples of planning fallacy.
Thanks, Luke. We have already seen what the planning fallacy is and a business example of it, but it is not only large companies that are victim to this cognitive bias. We face this problem every day. How many times have you undervalued the time it would take you to finish a meal? Or even on your journey to university, you may have thought you could make it to the station in 20 minutes, but in fact, you did not account for the delays on the road or the fact that you needed to top up your Oyster card. This is the planning fallacy. In 1994, one of the most famous experiments regarding planning fallacy was conducted at the University of Waterloo by Roger Buehler and Dale Griffin. They surveyed a group of college students, asking them how long they estimated it would take them to complete their senior theses. On average, they said it would take them around 33.9 days to complete. After being prompted to give an absolute worst case and best case scenario for finishing the paper, the best estimated time they gave was 27.4 days and the worst estimated time was 48.6 days. At the end of the study, it was shown that the students in fact took an average of 55.5 days to complete their theses. This was even longer than the expected worst case scenario. It should also be known that these students were not foreign to writing such essays, and yet they continued to underestimate their abilities to finish within a given time. This over-optimism displayed was due to their inability to consider unexpected occurrences, such as distracting phone calls or illness, and only focus on the positives. Now, my friend Kangan will further explore into the theory behind this bias.
Thank you. So why there's planning fallacy? Firstly, it is due to our cognitive bias when evaluating compound event. People tend to overestimate the probability of conjunct events due to anchoring effect, and this may cause unwarranted optimism. A simple example of a conjunct event is to draw red balls a few times in succession from a box containing 90% red balls and 10% white balls. The high probability of 90% red balls creates an anchoring effect, giving people an illusion that this event is very likely. However, since the ball is drawn in succession, as the draw increases, the probability decreases. Likewise, when we are making a plan, our plan often consists of a smaller conjunctive task. Even each of these tasks is likely, the overall probability may be low. The second cause is our overconfidence due to our inside view. It means that when we're evaluating the likelihood of our plans, we often make predictions based on our own understanding of the details, instead of outside view, a bigger picture that involves similar previous cases. By ignoring the outside view, we will easily have the bias toward optimism and favor only the positive information in our decision-making processes. The third cause is the social pressure, especially in competitive workplace. Sometimes people deliberately underestimate the cost and duration of a project to gain great attention from senior executives and clients. This will cause inaccurate and intuition-based planning. So how should we avoid this fallacy? I will leave the question for Ishan to answer.
Glad you asked that question. There are, in fact, many psychological solutions to solve this irrationality. Humans in general are irrational creatures that tend to overestimate their abilities, leading to something known as illusionary bias. This is when we self-enhance our abilities and therefore miscalculate planning details of a task. When analysing someone else's piece of work, we tend to be more critical than when studying our own. Therefore, by having external parties that can play devil's advocate, provide a more pessimistic opinion, may provide the outside view we need. Segmentation of project plans is another method and involves subdividing the whole project into smaller, more short-term goals. In terms of budgeting and deadlines, it may increase the accuracy of the estimation for these values. Consequently, it will result in additional costs in terms of time taken to schedule these small tasks. Research has shown that we tend to overestimate how long it takes to achieve these smaller tasks, which is better than being late. Another great solution is reference class forecasting. This involves basing future decisions on similar past events. This is an example of distributional information as a great way to bypass our intuitive guesses about the outcome of the project and involve an outside view. Varying the budget to account for the past miscalculated cost is a method to solve planning fallacy, but it also tends to ask the question, is this solving the irrational planning of the projects, or is this a temporary bandage before an even bigger planning fallacy that is going to occur?
So, there is no doubt that planning fallacy plays a role in all of our lives due to a combination of cognitive bias, overconfidence, and social pressure. We see that even though we have past experiences, we always somehow end up underestimating the time it will take us to complete our tasks. So, after this presentation, we all want you to be aware of this fact and try to think twice before starting planning about how much time your future task will take completing. Thank you very much for listening.